why we were introducing the economic reform, because people were not satisfied with previous things like the licensing system, the green revolution, everything. They were criticizing it, right? So somehow we needed, they wanted some extra reform or some new reform, so that is economic reform, right? So feature and appraisal of these are the three things which you are going to focus on: liberalization, globalization, and privatization. Liberalization means, earlier there was lots of restriction, that licensing was there, that until and unless government don't approve you, you cannot open new industry, you cannot expand your industry. So liberal means now there is no, to remove all the restriction, that is liberalization. And globalization, as the world suggests, global. Earlier, in earlier chapter, what we did over there, just to not compete with a foreign product, what India did, Indian government decided that we will be producing everything within the country, right? Within the country, and nobody will be selling things out of the country, right? But now it was decided that we will not sell things in, like, within the country, but we will also sell it across the global, right? So that is globalization. And privatization is basically, earlier in the two chapter what we studied, that everything was, most of the things were under control of government, right? But now we decided that most of the, because we have seen, as you will compare governments, I'm talking about India, you will compare government sector and the private sector. For example, you have government school, so the condition will not be that much like up to the mark, but private school facilities will be there, like of course they are charging high fees and all that, but still there will be facilities. So now people decided that, earlier 80% of the things was controlled by government, but now it was decided that privatization should be there, and most of the things should be given to the private sector as well. So that is your LPG policy. L is for liberalization, P is for privatization, and G is for globalization, right? So these are the things which is your LPG policy. And after this, like, from this chapter, demonetization and GST, these are the new added chapter for economy. And this is very important. Either you will be getting question from GST or demonetization. So demonetization means, for example, earlier the 500 rupees note was like this. Now demonetization, like I'm discontinuing this note. Now I will be introducing some new notebook. Oh, sorry, some new notes, right? For example, you are wearing white color t-shirt for your school dress, right, as a uniform. But now after 5 years, I decided that I will, demolish this dress. Now I will introduce some different color dress. So now I introduce green color dress. So I basically discontinued the previous one and I introduced new one. So demonetization, D means remove, monetization means this is for money, so I'm discontinuing the money which is the previous one which we are using, right? And GST, we already did this in government budget chapter, right? Goods and services tax, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, just what you will write, first of all, you'll write chapter number 3, economic reforms in 1991, and these are the things which we are going to cover under this chapter. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, you can start. I just write it down and then we'll start with the chapter. Good evening, Janab. So basically, Janab, we are going to do the new chapter, which is your chapter number 3, economic reform. So over there, we are going to study this: liberalization, globalization, and privatization, and demonetization and GST. Okay. So earlier two chapter, like development experience, over here, this is chapter number 1. This is chapter number 2. So I will be taking your extra class where I'll be explaining you these two chapter. But today I'll be starting from here. Clear? So you can write down the syllabus. This is for Indian economic, right? So you'll write chapter number 3, unit 1, chapter number 3, economic reform since 1921. And this is what we are going to study over there: liberalization, globalization, privatization, demonetization, and GST. Clear? So you can write it down and then we'll start with the chapter.
Okay, ma'am. Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Okay. So let's just start with the chapter. So before starting the chapter, I'll just give you the gist of the previous chapter, right? Then we'll start. Okay. I hope you can see my screen. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now basically, students, this is your chapter number 3, which is your economic reform, right? Now the concept is, ma'am, what is why economic reform? What about the two previous chapter? In the previous chapter, what we did basically, we studied few things which are like how was India, like India was under British colonial rule, right? So how India adopted new things and what were the problem India faced, all those things we did in the previous chapter, right? What was the condition of India, this we discussed, right? In the first chapter, at the time, eve of independence, right? Eve of independence means when India was getting independence, at that moment what was the condition of India, this. And the second chapter we studied, like once India got independence from Britishers on 15 August 1947, India started adopting new policies. Why? Because, for example, you are under control of someone, you are servant of someone, right? So, what you will do once you get free, so you will try to improve yourself, right? So, first, in the first chapter, I'll study about your status. What was how people tortured you. What was when India got independence? What was agriculture sector? How it was like? What was the status? Whether it was good, bad, industrial sector, foreign exchange, everything. And the second chapter, we'll study how India adopted different things to grow, to do development, right? So India adopted various policies, it also adopted planning commission so that they can improve, right? So in the next chapter, like in the third chapter, what we are going to study, see, though India introduced lots of the reform, but the only thing was that people were not satisfied with that, right? People were like, we are not happy with this, we want few other reform and all that, right? So in the third chapter, people demanded that economic reform means again, right? So most of the things was introduced in the chapter number 2, but now they wanted to reform it, like they were not happy with the policy, they wanted to make changes in that policy, right? So that is your economic reform. And since 1991, like after 1991, what we are going to do, right? So basically what happened, see, since independence, India followed the mixed economy. So basically, we have three types of economy in the country. Very, very important question for the economic students. Like, okay, I hope in 11th class also you studied this. Three types of economy. First is your capital economy, right? Ma'am, what is capital economy? Capitalist economy, where everything is under control of private sector. Okay. Second is your socialist economy, where everything is control of government sector. Okay. And third is mixed. Mixed means it is public plus the private plus the government. Right. So in India, you will see if you have government school, you have government hospitals, you have private hospital as well as private school. So everything is mixed, private plus government. Right. So since independence, when India got independence, India had three options, whether to adopt capitalist, socialist, or the mixed. Okay. So India decided that I will not follow capitalist, like everything is not going to be under private hands, and socialist, everything is not going to be under hand government. So India decided that India will be following the mixed economy. Right. So since independence, India followed the mixed economy framework, combining the advantage of capitalist economic system with those of socialist. So what they did, they combined capitalist as well as the socialist part. Right. So basically, what happened? India adopted various development paths, right? Some of the people were very happy with this, but others, what they did, on the other hand, some scholars argue that over the years, this policy resulted in establishment of variety of rules and law which are aimed to controlling and regulating the economy. So see, if I want to make development, I'll be introducing some policies, I'll be introducing some rules. Like for example, there was a rule of licensing. Right, licensing means that if you want to make new industry, if you want to grow, you have to follow few rules, you have to take license from the government, right? So this was basically, so people some people said okay, these were good ideas, but others said no, this is basically that you are trying to regulate others, you are trying to control others. So they were not happy with this. For those people only, economic reform means again they formed new things, right? So what happened basically, what of course, like for example, you are changing your strategy. Why you are changing your strategy? Because you are facing issues, right? So in 1991, India met with an economic crisis related to its external debt. Government was not able to make repayment of its borrowing from abroad. So in 1991, what happened? Economic crisis. Crisis is basically a negative point for the economy where nothing is going right, right? So basically, what India did, what like in India, the condition was very worse, right? And basically, the money they bought it from foreigners, they were not able to repay it. Plus, there was no foreign exchange, nothing. The prices were really high and all that. So what happened? All the slate, like everything was going like apart. So everyone was not happy. They were like, we are not happy with this policy and all that. And everybody demanded that we want change. We want change. We want change. That's why this chapter was introduced, which is not this chapter. Basically, economic reform were introduced because all the situation was there. But for example, if everything is going good, India has lots of foreign exchange, prices are very low, economy is growing, so why you will introduce it, right? But everything was going negative at that time, so that's why people demanded for the economic reform. Clear? The story is clear what we are going to study over there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. uh Pranav, it's clear to you also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, first question is, ma'am, why were economic reform introduced? Right, ma'am, why there was a need of economic reform? So see, over here you will be writing in points. Okay. So reasons were, the government was not able to the government was not able to generate sufficient revenue from internal source such as taxation. So from where government get revenue? Government get revenue. Revenue means money from tax, right? People pay tax, and this is basically the revenue for government. So what have first point was, government was not able to generate sufficient revenue. Like for example, government, for example, you want to purchase this dress which is for 100 rupees, but your salary is 20 rupees. So that means your salary is not enough to meet your expenditure, right? So first point, this was the reason why economic reform, with the following strategy. Government was not able to generate the revenues for internal from the internal sources, right? And second, the income from public sector undertaking was not very high. So basically what government do, government take money from private sector, like the public sector, in the sense, the income from public sector undertaking was not high. So whatever sectors government had, right, whether school, whether hospitals, the money they were earning, for example, I have this hospital, government hospital, so whatever money people will be donating here, like for example 10 rupees charges or anything, that will be going to government, but the revenue was very very low, it was not very high, right? So this was the second problem. Third, even though revenue was very low, the government had to spend more to meet challenges like unemployment, poverty, and population explosion, right? So next thing, the government was also spending a large share of its income on the area which do not provide immediate returns, such as social sector and national defense, right? So basically government was doing whatever money government was getting, government was not government, most of the, for example, government is getting 100 rupees, right? Out of this 100 rupees, government was using 80 rupees in two sector. One is social welfare. Social welfare means government will be giving subsidies, government will be providing free rations, free food supply to the poor people, few scholarship and all that. And second thing is defense, right? So most of the things what government was doing, government was basically introducing the things in two parts, one is social and one is your defense, right? So from there nothing is coming back. If I'm giving you scholarship, in return I'm getting nothing, right? So this was also a problem, that most of the money government was spending in these two sectors, because of that government was not able to generate revenue, right? And next, in late 1980s, government expenditure began to exceed its revenue by such a large margin that meeting the expenditure through borrowing become unsustainable. Now, what happened? One is your revenue and one is your expenditure. Revenue is basically whatever you are earning, and expenditure is whatever you are spending. So, at that moment, for example, government was getting 100 rupees and the expenditure was 200 rupees. So, you can say 100 rupees government was earning, but expenditure is 200 rupees, right? So, in late 1990s, what happened? Government expenditure become too high as compared to revenue, and it was very difficult to maintain. So for example, you need 100 rupees extra, so from where you will be getting this 100 rupees? You will be taking from some other, right? So even sustaining through borrowing was not possible at that time, right? Next, next point, prices for many essential goods rose sharply, right? Prices increase. So when prices increase, it's always lead to the negative point in the economy, right? Next, import grew at very high rate without matching growth of export. So import grew at a very very high rate, matching to the growth of export. So import means if you want to purchase something, right? So most of the most of the time, because government was not sufficient enough to produce things on her own, so government was taking things from abroad, importing things. So when you will import, you have to pay them money, right? And you right now you don't have money, so from where you will be paying? So that became a problem, right? Next, foreign exchange reserve declined to a level that it was not adequate to finance import for more than 2 weeks. Right. So just don't write from here. You can write there was not sufficient foreign exchange to pay the interest need of paid of international lenders. So what was the thing? I borrowed the money from foreign people. Right. So that is right. But somewhere I don't have that much money that I am lender, means I have to pay interest to them, right? If I am taking money from someone, I am borrowing money from someone, I have to pay interest. So though I took money, but I am not capable enough to pay the interest. So that was also a negative point. Next, also no country or international funder was willing to lend to India. So nobody, because everybody knows, see, if you are very, very poor, if I'm giving you money, that's my risk. That right now you are so much, you are unemployed. From where you will be returning my money, right? So that was the condition of India, that nobody was, ready, to pay, India the funds. Nobody was willing, that we should not. Everybody was putting the excuses that we don't have exchange right now, we don't have enough money and all that. So because of all this problem, there was a need of economic reform, right? But now the question is, when India agreed that okay, we will be introducing the economic reform, right? So this paragraph, so you will be writing points 1, 2, 3, 4 like this, and you will be leaving one line over here, and after that you'll be writing this paragraph. Now ma'am, what is this paragraph? Basically, see, India approached, now India need money. See over here, what I told you, no country or international funder was willing to lend India, nobody was ready. So now of course the India need money. So where India will be going? India will be going to some international organization, right? So India approached the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is IBRD, right? Popularly known as World Bank and IMF, International Monetary Fund. So here, from here you get a 1 marker question. I'll be asking you, well, what is the different name for World Bank? So World Bank is also known as IMF or this. Or I'll be asking you, what is the full form of this, or I can ask you anything from there. So you have to remember the names. Okay. So India approached the international organization, right, and they gave India $7, $7 billion as loan to manage the crisis, right? For availing loans. For example, you came to me and I was like, okay, I'll be giving you loan, but in return, you have to make some promise to me. Right. So this happened with India. What happened basically, for availing the loan, this international agency expected India to liberalize and open up the economy by removing restriction on the private sector, right? So first they demanded that India will liberal means give freedom to the economy. They will remove all the restriction on private sector. They will reduce the role of government in the area of remote trade restriction between India and other country. Okay, so they expected that okay, if you are going to agree on these points, that you are going to liberal your economy, you are going to give more role to the private sector, right, and you are going to remove the trade restriction between India and other countries, then only we'll be giving you loan. India was in need of loan, so India agreed to conditionaries of World Bank and IMF and announced the new economic policy. So India said, okay, sir, we will be maintaining all the things, and India announced that we will be adopting new economic policy, which is your NEP, in 1991. Okay, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So I hope the whole story is clear to you. Why were economic reform introduced? These questions, and at last this is a conclusion. So everybody refused. At that time, India went to these organizations, and in their organization they gave the loan for $7 billion, but in return they expected that India will be following this and this point. Clear? So there was no option because India needed money. So India said, okay, we will be adopting new economic policy. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So wait, let me just explain you, then I'll ask you people to write it down. Okay. Now the next is, the set of policy can broadly be categorized into two groups. Now India agreed that okay, sir, we will be introducing new policies, right? So now India adopted policies, and these policies were divided into two parts. One is sustainable measure and one is structural reform. See, for example, you are in very worse condition and I want to make you topper, right? So first of all, what I will do, I will make you stable, right? I will help you to understand A, B, C, D, right? And after that, I will give you some policies. Okay, from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. you're going to study maths. From 9 to 10 you're going to study Hindi, like this, right? So the policies India adopted, it was divided into two groups. So first, what India did, it stabilized the measures, and after that, it structural reform policies. Now, ma'am, what is this? The policies India adopted, it was in two parts. Stabilization measure means, stabilization measure are short term measures. Short term measures means, see, if I want to make you stable, so how much time I'll be covering to teach you ABCD? Just, I think, 1 week, that will be more than enough, right? But if I want to improve your grades, that of course I'll take 1 year, right? So stabilization means you are unstable right now. Indian economy was unstable. The first measure was to make Indian economy stable. So stabilization measure are short term measure intended to correct the balance of payment position and to bring inflation under control, right? So this stabilization measure, they were short term. And why they was introduced? Because they want to make a balance of payment means whatever export was going, whatever import was going, there should be a balance. Like here we got to know that export were very sorry imports were very high, right? So we need to make a balance. And inflation means high prices, so there were high prices everywhere. So this stabilization measure were took so that we can control all this thing. Now, second was structural reform policy. This was a long term measure, right? The aim was to improve the efficiency of the economy and increasing its international competition by removing the rigidness in various segments of the Indian economy, right? So basically, this was a long-term measure, and here the main goal was to remove the restrictions, the rigidness. Earlier, India was like, we will not trade with everyone, we will be trading everything with ourselves, we will not give anyone, we will not import anything, we will not export anything. Plus, India said that. We'll be doing everything on our own and all that, right? India, plus there was a control of government sector even for the private sector, right? So all this rigidness was like, it was decided that we will be structure, the structure was very rigid. Now we are going to change it into flexibility, right? So how we will change it? We will adopt three things. First, liberalization means, earlier there was no freedom, private sector were not free, but now we decided that we will make them liberal, we will make them free, whatever they want to do. Next, privatization. Most of the part was under government sector, right? So we decided that now we will be giving role to the private sector as well. Now, next, global. Global means, earlier it was that Indian economy was like, if we will be doing trade within the country, not outside the country. But now we decided that we will be doing trade across the country, which is known as globalization. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Janab and Pranav.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. It's clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so I hope this chapter is not getting boring and you are getting to know about India. What was the condition of India, right? Okay, so now let's just start. So first of all, write the chapter number 1. Sorry, chapter number 3, economic reform since 1991, right? Quickly write it down, then I'll tell you what you have to.
Okay, done, ma'am.
Okay.
And ma'am.
Okay. Now we are going to do, you'll be writing hashtag why were economic reform introduced. Okay. And I've already mentioned first point till here, second till here, third, right? No, third from here. This is not the third point. Okay. Uh, right? No. Wait. Third point is from here. The government was also spending large scale defense. The next point in 1990s here. Then prices here. I have marked it already, right? So you'll be writing the points. Okay. And after that, we will be doing, I'll be scrolling it down. And after that, you'll leave one line and you'll be writing the paragraph. Clear? So what you will write? Hashtag why were economic reform introduced?
Ma'am, please can you scroll it down? Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Okay. Pranav, you are also done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now you are going to write the set of policies can broadly be classified into two groups. Okay, so what you will write? You will write that what are policies? You will write how policies of India classified. How how policies of India are classified. Then you will write from here and these 2 points.
Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Okay. Pranav, you are also done?
Yes, ma'am. Done.
Okay. Now, in this entire chapter, we are going to discuss about these three things: liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Right? So, we'll be starting from liberalization. So, ma'am, what is liberalization? So, liberalization is basically just setting them free. Right? So, liberalization means freeing the Indian business and industries from unnecessary control and restriction. Right? So, when you are going to, free the Indian economy or Indian business from the unnecessary restriction and controls, that is liberalization. Right? And few liberalization measures were introduced in 1980s in, okay, so you will write and you will write first hashtag liberalization, then you will write liberalization means freeing the Indian business and industry from unnecessary control and restrictions, right? And open various sectors of the economy. Clear? Just write it down and then we'll continue.
Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.
Okay, Pranav, you are also done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, next thing is that, see, when in 1980s this liberalization was introduced, right? So at that time, what happened? Basically, there were few sectors. We have different sector: industry sector, for infrastructure sector. So when in 1980 this was introduced, it was introduced only few areas like industrial sector, okay, licensing, export import, technology upgradation, fiscal policy, foreign investment, and all that, right? But in 1991, here I'm talking about 1980s. So it was introduced to only few sectors. But now, after 1991, it was introduced for new sector as well, like in the areas of industrial sector, financial sector, tax reform, foreign exchange market, trade and investment sector. Right. So earlier it was restricted to few one, and but now later on it introduced to some other sector as well. Clear? So after that you will write. Um, uh, okay, what you will write? You will write liberalization measures introduced in 1980s in areas. You will write from, like, you wrote the definition. After that, you will write liberalization measures introduced in 1980s in area. Okay, write it down. So you'll first write in 1980s it was introduced in this sector, and in 1991 it was introduced in this sector. Clear? So first write it down. Liberalization measure were introduced in.
Done, ma'am.
Okay. Voice done. This line. Liberalization measure were introduced in 1980s in areas of industrial. Done.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So industrial licensing. This is not industrial and licensing. They are together. Industrial licensing. Then export import policy, technological upgradation, fiscal policy, foreign investment, reform policy, right? Till here. And then you will write this in 1991. Then you will write in 1991 and then the areas from here. Industrial sector, finance sector, tax reform, foreign exchange, market and trade and investment sector. Okay, clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so till you will write here, and after that you will write 1991 and you will write from here the industrial sector till here.
Done, ma'am.
Done, ma'am.